Okay. I've been advised to try to explain my view on brand and culture as if I'm explaining it to a fourth grader. So, a brand is the intentional perception of how, okay, a brand is the way we remember. Think of a brand as the way you remember or think about a product or a company. Like, let's think about, I'm looking at my diploma, the University of Chicago. The brand of the University of Chicago, the image of it, is something that's been developed over however many hundred years that it's been around. It's what we expect of the school. For instance, when we think about the University of Chicago, what comes to mind? Really smart people, really great education, one of the best schools in the world, something that represents excellence, especially when it comes to academics, learning. And the University of Chicago also has, world-renowned hospitals and programs for business and law and so on. So all of those perceptions are what we would call the brand. And schools like the University of Chicago are very intentional about how people perceive them, because if excellence is a value that the University of Chicago wants to be associated with, they want people to think of excellence, then the school itself needs to be experienced as such. There are certain things that they have to make sure they do in order for people to still think about them as an institution of excellence, such as providing a level of education that is at an excellent, above average or superior level. A place where people who are the smartest and the most ambitious want to learn because they believe that that level of excellence is going to benefit them and benefit their lives. It's going to position them to be successful someday. It's going to give them the knowledge that another school cannot give them in a field or an area that they want to seek learning from. The brand is also, it's about, I think, okay, so that's, the school needs to do those things. It also needs to attract students, yes, that are ambitious. If we take one dimension of their brand, which one would say is excellence, there are other dimensions of their brand that I'm sure they want people to be aware of, such as being affiliated with a university of this caliber opens doors for you. Like if you go to a school like the University of Chicago, you get automatically to meet and connect with other people that identify themselves as pursuers of excellence. And so now we have these expectations, and the expectations is what the brand promise sets up in people. I expect a certain level of excellence from the University of Chicago. When it comes to, so my perception in part is due to what the University of Chicago, what I know of the University of Chicago. I know for a fact that it does this, that, or the other, or it has certain programs, or people who come from this school are very successful. Like, I know these things about it, and so now I expect it of the school. And that is one thing that the school can promise about itself. And the promise of an organization is its brand. The brand is the promise of what can be expected. What happens sometimes is what we expect is not actually what we get. And that's when there's a mismatch between the brand promise and the brand experience. What causes that mismatch to happen? I think one of the things has to do with the culture within an organization. If an organization is not able to deliver on its promise, then something is going on internally that is causing that mismatch. That's making it so that excellence maybe, rather than the University of Chicago delivering an A+ education, it starts to deliver a B+ education. But it's still talking about itself and still putting itself out there as an A+ organization, but it's actually a B+ organization. And so that's reflective of a mismatch going on internally, and that ends up costing the University of Chicago a lot of, I would say equity, but it costs them a lot in terms of how they're viewed, which ultimately someone's not going to go to the University of Chicago and pay $100,000 a year for their education. They're going to go to Harvard instead, because Harvard has a similar brand expectation, but it's still delivering on its promises. It's delivering A+ education, not just saying it. So now we have the culture issue. And I think of culture as all of the mechanisms, culture is a community. It's a group of people that behave in a way that put their focus and their energy in the same direction. Culture is its own organism. And depending on how well the group is working together, that's going to determine the level of quality that they produce outwardly. So as an example, the culture within the University of Chicago can exist on different levels. There are, if you think of micro communities, micro cultures, one such culture is the culture of the student body. Another culture is that of faculty. Another culture is that of administrators. Another is that of the executives who make decisions, who make key critical decisions about the governance of what the University of Chicago, how they're going to actually be producing, where they're going to be putting their investments, what types of programs, what types of new buildings, what types of experiences for the students and for faculty, so that they can continue to attract more excellent candidates to pay exorbitant amounts of money in order to attend the University of Chicago. And so at an organizational level, at a decision-making level, that culture has to function in a healthy way. If it's not functioning in a healthy way, and how do we define healthy? Well, are people happy to be there? That's the first metric. Do they feel aligned with what the University of Chicago is doing and how they're operating and their vision for the future? Does the University of Chicago support initiatives? Does it do things that the people within it care about? Or does it behave, or do they make decisions without ever considering what the people inside the organization think about it? What happens when the people within an organization don't really understand or believe in what the leadership is doing? Well, what happens then? They stop caring. They just go to work for the paycheck. They don't really put their full effort into their job. So now you have people whose jobs it is to promote and protect the brand, the promise of the University of Chicago in delivering excellence, and they're not themselves committed to excellence. They're committing to getting their paycheck and then leaving. You ever heard of that saying, I don't get paid enough to care? That's what happens when the culture has broken down, when there's a disconnect between leadership and the actions of the organization, I would say, and the experience, the actions and the values. It's like the people at the top have to behave in a way and have to move forward in a way that the people within the organization can believe in. It's a culture of belief. It's a culture of resonance. It's a culture of shared values. And so culture really boils down to shared values. And then the question becomes, how do you align people around a set of shared values? How do you even use words? Do you use words? Do you use actions? How do you even show people what the values of the organization are so that the people within it or the people that you're attracting to work for the organization feel aligned and energized by it and come up with innovative ways to produce more excellence? That's what our work is trying to uncover when we go in to rooms with leaders that have the responsibility of making sure that their organization's brand promise is something that is followed through on. And the culture piece is about discovering any areas within the organization where there's a mismatch or where there's dissonance between how someone experiences the place that they work or the place where they study or the community in which that organization exists, right? There's all different levels because there are so many different people that interact with the brand, with the organization. So our job is to find where there is potentially a misalignment between the brand as it is perceived or as it wishes to be perceived and the brand as it is actually experienced, so that we can remove friction points or areas of dissonance from interfering with the operation of excellence. And when we are able to fix that or help our clients solve that problem, then we can celebrate it. And then we can have, really cool ways of showing our unity. We can show, you see people who wear Lululemon, that's the brand. There's a culture of people. That's like a shared, I wear Lululemon and therefore I am, fill in the blank of what that means about me. I am a University of Chicago graduate. Therefore, what that means about me is, I live according to values of excellence. I am amazing. So one of the things that brings people together is having that shared identity, a way of showing it. So that could be swag. That could be a shared mantra or a set of words, like a rally cry. That could be any number of things, but they're typically visual and or spoken. And so that's where we have events that promote this, the tagline or the logo in way, on wearable merchandise or on signage that makes you think in a different way, or that makes you feel something because you see it, and seeing things activates the part of our brain that stores this sense of recognition, and that triggers feeling. And so that's the connection between brand and culture. And what I seek to do, and what Matriarchs is seeking to do, is to work with companies, work with organizations, work with brands that want to have a tighter alignment between their culture and their brand, so that what ends up happening is that their speed, if they have to come up with new ideas, or they want to launch a new product, or they want to, have a presence at a parade or something like that, so that they, or that at an annual meeting where the whole company gets together and is supposed to feel energized and eager to, spend their time on the next big project, so that all happens at a level of energy that is self-fulfilling. It's not a grind. You don't have people slugging their way to the meeting. You have people energized by it. Companies that are energized from within, those are the ones that are operating at an excellent level.